Live shortly. Says we're live, so I'm going to assume that we are actually live. Hopefully everything looks and sounds okay. You guys can hear my voice. Looks like it. So I guess we're kind of good to go. Let's see here. Okay. Let me move this to the side here. That works. That there. That works. Cool. Alright. So, looks like we're live. And tonight, going to be not as many people here on the show. It's just going to be me today, which is why I rebranded it to a Q&A. Some of you may know I tend to brand them as Q&As when it's just me. There's some exceptions there depending on the timing of things, but I had just enough time to change things around a little bit before we're now live. So the basic plan for tonight is I'm going to be talking about the Mario movie trailer again, but this time with a few days of having kind of thought about it, and then I'll be sort of hearing about what you guys have to say. We'll be doing a little bit of a Q&A, right? Question and answer. And then we're also going to be talking about how Nintendo may be marketing The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom leading up to its release from this point on. We recently got to see some pretty nice up-close photos of Link, like an actual fully made realistic, well, a statue of Link from Tears of the Kingdom, and this was done at this Nintendo Live event at Japan. And the basic point here is it's an amazing statue that shows really clear, crisp detail of this version of Link, and I think it does suggest things for what's to come. And really the main point is just that it's clear that if we're seeing stuff like this, it looks like Nintendo is ramping up the marketing for Tears of the Kingdom, as they should, given that they finally gave us a name, they finally gave us a release date, and of course the game is coming out this May, so we are getting closer to that time. And that's kind of the basic two main topics we're going to be covering tonight. Probably won't be as long of a discussion because I'm by myself here, and there's not a lot of news to maybe discuss, but I guess that kind of comes down to, well, I mean, there is a lot of news, but we've kind of talked about the Mario stuff already quite a bit, so I don't know how much more I'm going to go into that, but of course, that does depend on you guys, because this is a bit of a Q&A, so we'll see how things sort of go here. But let's check one in the chat. JR Toki, hello there, how are you? You were looking forward to this. Well, I'm still here, still doing it, hope you enjoy the show. Jeremy Benz, hello. Charles Shadell, hello there. DE Fox, thank you for modding, my friend. Jeremy Benz, hello. You heard about the Mario movie leaks? Okay. I did not. What? There's leaks? Okay. This would be news to me. Is it totally shocking? I guess not. I think whenever Nintendo is working with someone else that's not like from Nintendo of Japan, there is a sizable chance of a leak. Okay, the leaks happened early this year from Grub, you say, Nishquick. Okay. Okay, I'm gonna have to look into this because I'm not sure what you're referring to. I don't want to spoil anyone either, right? So like, I could look it up now, but I feel like for those who don't want to be spoiled, it probably shouldn't be discussed. But I will look into it. If you guys give me some hints though, to kind of point me in the right direction of where to find this stuff, I'll gladly take a look. I'll give you my vague thoughts because I don't want to spoil anyone, but I'll definitely take a look. Oh, you mean the McDonald's thing? I mean, I saw I don't know if okay, I don't know how much has come from the McDonald's thing, but if you mean just like seeing Princess Peach, yeah. Seeing a toy for Donkey Kong, yeah, okay. That's not that big of a deal. Nate made a video on it. Okay. Okay, I'll take a look at that video. I've seen that. I saw at least one of their discussions recently, but I don't remember anything about a leak. Oh, there's a particular scene in the movie. Okay. right, well, I'll touch on that at a different time outside of the discussion because I don't want to spoil anyone specifically. But yeah, I'll just kind of roll through the chat here. Right, having hope. The statue was gorgeous. Link does look amazing, and I'll put up some photos in a little bit here. We'll take a look at that. Super Luigi Kong. I wonder if we'll get any new amiibos for Tears of the Kingdom. It's funny you bring that up because I feel like the statue might be like a supersized version of what we'll eventually get as an amiibo of this version of Link. It really does feel that way, and I'm not the original idea maker for this concept. I mean, I saw this idea elsewhere, is what I'm trying to say. And I believe Captain Bergerson on Twitter, I saw them point out how there was a big kind of similar statue for Link with the bow for Breath of the Wild that is very comparable to this statue we're seeing for Link now with the Zonai hand, and that statue became an amiibo. So there could be sort of a comparison there that may mean that this big statue will also become an amiibo. Maybe. Moving on here. Okay. Well, you know what? While you guys roll in, let's pull up some of those photos. Let's take a look. Hold on. I'm gonna show you guys. Alright. Alright, one moment. I'll show you guys the photos. There's a whole bunch. I just like the whole bunch of stuff on Twitter. And I'll be pointing that out. Alright, here we go. This is not related to Zelda per se, but there's just this really good cosplay I saw of like Samus, which is just really good. It's really good. Cool stuff. But anyways, like, yeah, there are this beautiful statue. Like this, it's just so detailed. Like the Master Sword is huge. You're seeing his cloak like that. He's got a chainmail, which is more reminiscent of his Twilight Princess look, but obviously it's still Link and the Champions tuning from Breath of the Wild. You got the shoulder plating. You even see symbols on his hand. We'll get more to that soon. There's other stuff. I mean, here's some more shots here. It's just a beautiful statue. Like, I wonder how expensive this statue is, because I mean, I probably can't afford it, but I want to be able to afford it because it looks incredible. I mean, you get an up-close shot of the left gauntlet here. It's a stunning, stunning, stunning statue. Looks so cool. There is no little tear thing. Like in the trailer, we see that Link has some sort of like tear canister or green energy thing holder. It's not there. Are these photos different? They're pretty much the same. Or exactly the same, okay. Is that one different? I don't know. I think that might be... See, this is... Captain Bergerson pointed this out, so props to him. Highland Games Cast. He's also on Game Over Jesse. Check him out. Has his own channel too, so... But you see, we had like this really cool statue of Link with the bow, and we got the amiibo for it when Breath of the Wild came out. There might be something similar going on here, you know? Maybe. Notice how here you can get a clear look that like this side of Link's arm, like the champion's tunic, is actually like burned. So some serious damage happened to Link's armor. It's not just like a magical armament, pun intended. It's, yeah, okay, that's just different stuff. All right, but yeah, there's some crazy stuff here. It's just an amazing looking statue. It looks stunning, 100%. All right, but that's enough of that for now. Let me come back to my face for a bit. Let's see here. Yeah, yeah. If it ends up being an amiibo, I'm totally on board with getting it. Quinn McDonald, looking sharp, Andre. Keep up the super fine content, brother. Thank you very much for saying that. I appreciate it. It does help me to keep going. Thank you. Super Luigi Kong. I think it'll be a great amiibo if true. I already pre-ordered Tears of the Kingdom. If we get an amiibo similar to the statue we saw, I'll definitely be pre-ordering that too. Yeah, I mean, it looks really cool. I will say, I had a theory for Tears of the Kingdom at the time we called it Breath of the Wild 2, related to Skyward Sword. So remember how we got the Wolf Link amiibo from Twilight Princess HD? And then the year after, when Breath of the Wild came out, we had Wolf Link amiibo functionality inside Breath of the Wild. Well, I believe that the Loftwing amiibo that was made available for Skyward Sword HD could also have functionality inside Tears of the Kingdom. So what I think is a possibility is that maybe that amiibo could grant you a Loftwing. So the Loftwing itself may not be within Tears of the Kingdom, like in terms of the story, kind of like Wolf Link amiibo. Like you can play the entire game without ever seeing the Wolf Link. You know, you have to unlock it through the amiibo, and they could do something similar with the Loftwings. Like there seem to be a number of different ways to traverse in the sky. I don't think it's entirely out of the realm of possibility that at some point or another there may be a sky mount. Now, I'm not going to say this with 100% confidence anymore, because at the time when I made the theory, we hadn't seen as much gameplay. We had only seen the second trailer. At this point, I think it's a little bit less likely, because looking at what we've seen so far, it's clear there's a lot of mechanics centered around getting up and flying places. There might be a bit of a puzzle in terms of trying to find ways up, because while you may be able to soar downwards as much as you like, if there's an island in the sky that you can't reach simply by, you know, gliding towards it because it's above you as opposed to below you, then there may need to be other mechanics in place to get there. Like for example, we've seen that one time mechanic where Link rides up like some sort of block or piece of ruin that goes up into the sky, and we've also seen that sort of like weird green drop thing that seems to sort of phase Link up through islands. Those may be certain particular points we may have to find, and they may not just be readily available. So the reason I bring this up is simply because if there is a Loftwing that you can unlock through an amiibo, depending on how the game is designed, it could break the game. So if that is the case, of having a free, readily accessible flying in all directions breaks the design of the game, then they're not going to have it readily available as an amiibo. But that really just comes down to how the game is being designed and how it's being put together. If, in theory, this doesn't really make it that easy for you, maybe there's gusts of wind that block you off, or just getting to the island itself is not really that much of a hurdle or a challenge, maybe they could do it. Maybe make it more of a late game thing. That's another possibility as well. But I'll say most likely it's not going to happen, but I damn sure want it to happen. So we'll see. Maybe the Loftwings only work in the lower part of Hyrule. I don't know. But just a thought I wanted to kind of put out there, since we're talking about amiibos here. But on that note, though, kind of just like thinking more on it, like I wonder, you know, what other types of amiibo could we see for this game, right? Because that bow version of Link wasn't the only amiibo there was for Breath of the Wild. Are we going to get like 6 or 7 other amiibos for Tears of the Kingdom as well? It's tough to say. I think from one angle you could argue, well, I mean, you know, they did it for Breath of the Wild, they should do it again. Okay. Yeah, maybe. I mean, Tears of the Kingdom, it's been 5, 6... Wait, yeah, I mean, if it comes out 2023, it's going to have been more than 6 years since the release of Breath of the Wild, so that's a long gap. That's a big Zelda game. They may want to kind of really, like, you know, just go all out here and have all sorts of cool marketing things and cross-promotional merchandising and all of that, including amiibo. So they may go all out with a whole bunch of new amiibo. But then on the flip side, given that it is technically a direct sequel, it may not need as much amiibo support. Like, that may not really that big of a, it may not be that big of a sticking point. At the end of the day, we're just talking about amiibo here, so, you know, I don't really think it really matters too much, but, you know, I would love to see more amiibo, because I think amiibo, especially for Zelda, is really cool. The Guardian amiibo, that's one of my favorite amiibo. I have my amiibo put away in a box right now, so I can't, like, show it off, but you guys have most of you have probably seen it before. It's cool stuff. So, you know, if there's gonna be other cool statues and things, I would love to see that. I mean, heck, what if that character that's in the what I call the Bunny Zonai, the character with the long, like, ears that we see in that we saw in the latest trailer, like, what if that's a new character? What if that character has an amiibo? What if there's an equivalent to the Guardian and that becomes an amiibo, whatever that may be, right? Maybe there's dragons, maybe there's a dragon amiibo, maybe there's going to be a Ganondorf amiibo. Actually, I want a Ganondorf amiibo. That's got to happen. So, maybe we'll get something like that. Moving on here. Let's see. AB James, his arm and hands look awesome, don't they? Yeah, they look really cool. It's nice to get a nice up close detailed look of Link. Like, we've seen these things, but in the trailers, you know, it's a limited look. It's not like it's like a really up close. Like, we don't see the camera up close to Link, and it's not like it's like a big 4K thing. So when you zoom in, you just don't see as much detail. So to see that statue, yeah, it's nice. AB James, I bought a 30th anniversary Ocarina of Time Link amiibo for $12.99 retail at Best Buy when they were that price. Now it's now going for $100. You know, it's interesting. I'm kind of curious how valuable some of my amiibo are now. I haven't taken a look at all. I don't plan on selling them, but something to consider. I do want to buy a house, so they're worth thousands of dollars, which they probably are not. You know, I'm not going to sell them. MZ Killer 2022. MZ Killer 22, not 2022. Anyways, you say, I wonder if we can suck the soul energy from our enemy. That's how our hand turns green, and we can reuse that power in different ways. That's kind of dark. It's kind of dark. It's also not too different from Samus's arm in Metroid Dread. So as you progress in Metroid Dread, her arm she uses it to suck out life energy from enemies, because she's developing more and more as a Metroid. And what Metroid do, they're parasitic. They suck out the life essence from creatures. So very Metroid-like. I'll just say that. Super Luigi Kong, that would be awesome. I think a Loftwing meal would fit perfectly. I'm also thinking amiibos from Breath of the Wild will probably be compatible as well. Okay. Paco Salvador, I think locking a mechanic like Wolf Link behind an amiibo is a really bad idea. Well, you know, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe they won't be a Loftwing amiibo. I mean, I guess I wouldn't be wrong. I'm saying it's unlikely at this point. But, you know, I still think it's worth mentioning, so I'm mentioning it. In Specia videos, maybe the Loftwings will be like the bike. At the end of the Tears of the Kingdom, we will unlock them. Maybe. Heck, you know, another possibility to go in that direction is it's maybe not even at the end of the game, but it's at the end of the DLC of the game. Because it's probably going to be DLC. I could see that being DLC. Maybe there's some sort of like Loftwing story there. Maybe there's another expanse of islands they add that you can explore, and there's also implications for the rest of the world. It kind of mix things up just a little bit more, and it functions as an additional DLC campaign, and what you get as a reward is a Loftwing amiibo. Or not a Loftwing amiibo, but a Loftwing. And yeah, that would be really cool. Maybe the Loftwing amiibo could simply unlock a particular type of Loftwing. That way you can play like maybe as the Crimson Loftwing from Skyward Sword. That's something they could do, and that would be really cool. Now, I don't know if they would save a amiibo mechanic for DLC, but you know, I'm just throwing out ideas there. It doesn't have to be for the DLC. It could be just at the end of the game, to your point. Or maybe it happens at the end of the DLC and it's not necessarily locked to an amiibo, but Loft Wings could still be added at some point. I don't think it's that. I think it's it's in the cards. Sorry. Just kind of scrolling through here. DE Fox. Gameplay affecting amiibo haven't really been a thing in Nintendo games since Breath of the Wild. It's a concept that Nintendo and most gamers have moved on from. Yeah. That's a fair point. I can't really think of any, and in general, I'm not a fan of it. So, you know, could be. I would say that the Wolf Link is a fairly insignificant little gameplay addition. But also, taking that into consideration, I would also argue that a Loft Wing probably also would be a more significant gameplay addition. But when I say Loft Wing, I'm also saying that with the assumption that there will be other alternatives that will basically be like Loft Wings. So there may already be certain flying creatures or devices you can use in Tears of the Kingdom, and a Loft Wing would basically just be like a reskin or a slightly different version of that. That's the only circumstance where I could sort of see it. Like adding an amiibo that gives you a Loft Wing that allows you to fly everywhere, and you can't do that with anything else in the game. Yeah, I don't think that would be happening. And when I was talking about it being unlikely because of how they may design the game and how you explore it, and it could be game breaking. Even with that in mind, well, ultimately, what I'm trying to say is that let's say that is the case, that they could add a Loft Wing. They could do that because the way they design a game, it's not game breaking. They would only do that if there is also something comparable to it in the game already. Like the game would be designed around a flying creature that you can maneuver and use throughout the world. And under those circumstances, it would make sense to add a Loft Wing. If the game wasn't designed with that in mind, throwing a Loft Wing in there, yes, would be game breaking. Hopefully I made a little bit more sense that time. Hopefully. Just keeping up with the chat here. AB James, I wonder how the map is going to work in Tears of the Kingdom. Like if there's no towers and the slate was the gateway to seeing the map, the objective in the sky is going to be seeking out the various Torii gates, and entering them is likely going to take us somewhere significant, some new realm. So it could be the case that these different islands could be like the new versions of the shrines. I think that's a thought that a lot of people have had in mind. And I think there's a really good chance of that. I mean, we've seen certain shots where Link is coming out of some sort of building in the sky. What is inside that building? We don't know. Could be another shrine, could be a bigger dungeon. I'm going to venture to guess that it's something more along the lines closer to a shrine, mainly because I feel like if it's a dungeon, there might be something a little bit more grandiose to it. Like, I mean, just for example, I'll literally show you just my wallpaper that I sort of showed off earlier. Like, you take a look here, right? This is just the art for Tears of the Kingdom. There's these different points in the map that the art that we see. There's Death Mountain, there's the castle, and then there's this giant tornado. These are 3 points of interest that our eyes are going to sort of notice with the ground. Obviously, there's the castle. We want to get to that at some point. But what's new information here, or confirmed information, is that there's something going on with Death Mountain as well. We suspected something before this recent trailer because it seemed like the lava wasn't there or what have you. But now we're seeing mouse coming out of it. So that obviously it's something we focus on. And then we also have the tornado as well. That's something we focus on. I'm pretty sure I'm not the only person who's suspecting that there's going to be some sort of big trial within these 3 points of interest on the surface of Hyrule. It wouldn't shock me if each of these are actually tied to some sort of new dungeon, potentially. Let's think about this for a second. If we want to restore Death Mountain back to normal, maybe we have to go into Death Mountain through the malice and quell whatever malice beast may be causing this uproar. Maybe we have to plug a hole somewhere or something to stop the connection of the malice. Maybe a big part of Tears of the Kingdom is using powers that we may obtain in the sky to find ways to combat the darkness below. That being the malice. So there could be maybe some sort of fire temple boss in Death Mountain, like actually inside the mountain this time around, and maybe there could be something going on with that giant tornado in the Hebrew region. Maybe we're going to go inside a whole other mountain that has an entirely different temple that we did not see at all inside Tears of the Kingdom. I mean, Breath of the Wild. I'm choking here. It's not easy to just do a podcast by yourself. I'll get through it. Excuse me. I'm coming back to my face now. Okay. Ronnie Fazio added me. Okay, I don't think this casting will ever happen, but Andrew Garfield as Link would be amazing. Andrew Garfield played the Amazing Spider-Man, right? Also, he was in The Social Network, among other things. Yeah, that's him. You know, I really don't know how I feel about who could play as Link. That's tough. It's really tough. I honestly don't know. I really don't know who I'd be okay with playing as Link. Like, I'm not saying Andrew Garfield couldn't do a good job. I guess he could. I have no problems with him as an actor. So, you know, sure. I'm not against it. I just, there's nothing in particular about him that I'm like, yeah, that's a Link kind of guy. Like, that definitely not, you know, my first thought. But it's an interesting sort of like talking point, I guess, because what would be a good actor for Link? And I think what we first have to decide is this going to be a live action movie where we can see like actual people, or is this going to be more like an animated movie, kind of like the Mario movie, where there's going to be like CGI? And I guess a whole other angle is because are they even going to do a movie? What if they end up doing like an animated series instead, like an actual anime? And I feel like an anime would probably be a lot easier for Nintendo to do. I mean, we saw that like animated short of Link and Pit fighting each other as a part of the Smash reveal trailer for Palutena. That's something. Excuse me. That's something that is pretty conceivable because it's already been done before. But when you take a look at the Mario movie, when you take a look at that trailer, you see who they're putting up as the actors. You see how they're presenting with the direct and how much time they've taken with this. I think it's pretty clear Nintendo is doing their absolute best to hit this out of the park. The budget behind this movie is significant. The quality is there. And given how successful Nintendo seems to be nowadays, how prevalent their brand is, how prevalent the Mario brand is, and how successful this movie looks like it's going to be, I think, you know, this Mario movie isn't going to be like a one-off. I think after this point, Nintendo will be more inviting to do different things. And considering that Breath of the Wild had the incredible sales it's had, and how the Zelda series is on a whole other level of sales potential, I think this does raise the likelihood of there being a Zelda movie in the future. or some sort of Zelda adaptation, be it a movie, a series, or an anime, whatever it is, something's coming. I think that it is down the road. Probably a long ways off. Look how long they've taken with this Mario movie. But, you know, maybe they already anticipate great success with this Mario movie and they feel like they're already in the early stages for a Zelda something too, you know? So, I don't know. I don't want to say it's going to happen like immediately, but it may not be 20 years off. Maybe it's only 5 years off or a little bit more or less. I don't know. But just with that in mind, of that potential, what's thinking like where can Nintendo go? Honestly, I'd be totally okay with them just sort of doing movies. Just sort of doing movies and seeing where they go. And if they start to have like consecutive strong movie releases, maybe they'll go to some of their smaller series and they'll have something a little bit of a smaller scale. So say Mario does well, and then they do a Zelda movie. Well, we'll come back to Zelda in a moment. I know that was kind of like the branching off point. We'll come back to that. But let's say we have a Zelda movie, it does well. That's all great. Maybe there's another Pokemon movie that happens. I think that's probably in the works anyways. And it all does really well. And then all of a sudden, it's now a thing. Like, Nintendo movies are now a thing. Like, Nintendo will have their next big movie project, right? There's rumors of a Donkey Kong one that's in the works. That's the Mario movie, for example. But these start happening. At that point, it wouldn't shock me. Nintendo's like, okay, let's take some of our smaller series and give them an opportunity to succeed, say, like, as a Netflix sort of, like, one-off. Like, maybe they'll have a limited run of, like, an F-Zero, for example. Or maybe they'll have, like, a horror series on HBO Max for Metroid. Although I think they should just make a movie for that, too. But I think that Metroid's a long ways off because of how popular it is. But maybe it could be a movie, but maybe it wouldn't come to theaters. Maybe it would just be like saying it releases on a streaming app, like an HBO, like a Netflix. But the point is that I could see Nintendo maybe having having smaller budget products for some of their smaller series come out on streaming apps in a slightly different way. But I really do feel like, you know, with this Mario movie, we're heading in the direction of seeing more Nintendo movies down the road. That all said, coming back to Zelda. How do they handle Zelda? Do they do an anime? Do they do a live action? Do they do a CGI? I think, honestly, any of the three could work really, really well. There's all sorts of comparisons between Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom to Princess Momonosuke. Like, you know, what if they were to make a Zelda movie that's basically like a studio, like, is it Ghibli or Ghibli? If you know the studio, you know what I'm referring to. The studio behind Spirited Away, for example. If they were to do, like, I would actually be really, what if they did, like, hire Studio Ghibli to make a Zelda movie? That would be really cool. So if they were to go, like, the animated route, that would be really nice to see. Now, I don't know how they would handle the action elements and things of that nature, but, you know, it's just a thought. On the other side, though, like, Zelda they could really just make it like another version of Lord of the Rings. And that's another crazy idea. Like, what if the next big sort of Lord of the Rings sort of phenomenon is Zelda? Like, we have Game of Thrones, we had Harry Potter, we had Lord of the Rings, obviously. And there's been other series that have done well, but, like, in terms of, like, big, like, episodic movie releases, Lord of the Rings, Harry Potter, Game of Thrones wasn't a movie, it was, you know, through HBO, but, and yes, Harry Potter's not exactly the same, but it's kind of like, you know, that sort of, a big sort of live action fantasy series adaptation. Zelda could be that. It could become that. It has that potential. So I kind of would like to see them go in that direction, because, I mean, it would be a huge money pot, first off. Now, the question is, does Nintendo think could they handle that well? And maybe they wouldn't. Maybe they would decide to do something that's a little bit easier. So that's where, you know, that can affect what direction they go in there. And another consideration is that if they're gonna do like these CGI things for like the you know, the animated Pixar or Illumination style Mario movies, what if they want all of their movies to be like that? And that's just kind of like what they do. You know, like if you kind of go back to how Disney movies used to be, they had a certain style, and now most Disney movies still have like a certain style, but it's like more of like the CGI style. Like, what if that's just like what you kind of come to expect for Nintendo, and it's not just kind of like different kinds of things depending on the series? So that's a question that I think Nintendo may be considering, or maybe they won't be. Maybe it's all just going to be CGI. That's hard to say, but you know, let's assume it is. That doesn't mean it can't still be kind of like an incredible, sort of like amazing fantasy adaptation that we see coming out to theaters year by year. Like, and it could have like a success similar to Lord of the Rings or like Harry Potter. Like, that could still happen, but it would obviously be a little different. So, you know, that's something to consider there. And the reason I bring up all these different things, kind of going back to the question, who could play as Link, that matters, right? Because if it's a live action, then you got to think about the look. You got to think about the look, and you don't just design it as Link from the games. And regardless, you got to think about the voice. I feel like the voice has a little bit more of a focus when it's CGI, because, well, that's all you got from a person, right? Who would play a good Link? And that's a tough question, because Link doesn't have a voice in the games. So a whole other hurdle that the Zelda series used to get by first, before we even talk about movies, is the games. We need voice acting in the games. And yes, we have voice acting, but we don't have voice acting for Link. And I don't think you can get away with the main character of your series without having a voice. So I guess what I'm really saying is, yeah, I mean, if we're going to get a voice for Link, we got to see in the games first. Maybe Tears of the Kingdom, Link will finally start talking. Breath of the Wild does have lore that tells us why Link is silent. He made a vow of silence. Maybe he will, for whatever reason, not go back on that. It's a different time, but finally open up. And we'll see that in the story for Tears of the Kingdom. That'll be really cool. And if that happens, if Link starts talking in the games, then that opens the door for movies or whatever they decide to do in the future. But let me check here. I asked someone to join the show. Yeah, they're not available. That's fine. But let me come back to the chat here. I know that was like a pretty long tangent. This entire show is tangents. Just putting it out there. That's clear. You guys know that's why you come here. So we talk about random Nintendo stuff. J&J LPS. It's sad that Nintendo fans don't criticize the garbage Nintendo puts out constantly, but then they complain about Mario's voice even though it's a near perfect fit for a feature film. Oof, that's loaded. So, I mean, I guess my perspective is a biased one. I mean, we're all biased in our own ways, right? I'm a hardcore Nintendo fan, obviously. So, you know, I like a lot of things Nintendo does. I think they do a really great job. But that's why I'm a Nintendo fan, because they tend to do a really great job. There are things I don't like. You know, I think, and they're the things that most people don't like, right? Like I think they could do better with their online. That's obvious. You know, I don't really have a problem with them making games on underpowered hardware, but I also would love to see Nintendo have games on more powerful hardware, because they would just look better. They would run better. There's more things they could accomplish with that. Like, you look at the poster for the Mario movie. Let me just show it again because it's amazing. I think I have it here. Yeah, it's just such a cool poster. Like, it looks incredible. I'm just showing it off because it just really just looks that good. Like, you look at this. Like, imagine if that was a game. It looks like it could be a game. Like, imagine, for example, if Nintendo made games for the PlayStation 5, a world like this is conceivable for a game. Like, it's not that much of a stretch. For the Switch, no chance. For a PS5, kind of a chance, you know? And who knows, maybe the next Mario is going to be exclusive for Nintendo's next generation system, and it's going to be something kind of like this. And that'll be crazy. I would love to see that. But anyways, you know, I only bring up this stuff to say that there, you know, it's not like I don't. There are things that Nintendo does that I'm not like a super big fan of. I don't love that they don't always have directs the way I want them to. You know, I think sometimes that kind of can take the wind out of their own sail. I mean, let's talk about this, for example, Tears of the Kingdom. I'm not sure I'm entirely in love with how they've handled marketing this game. Because, truth be told, well, I love talking about Zelda, and I am excited for Tears of the Kingdom. I'm not nearly as excited as I am for Tears of the Kingdom as I was for Breath of the Wild. And there's multiple reasons for that. It's not just because Nintendo has done a poor job of marketing the game. And that's still under debate, right? Because if the game ends up selling 30 million copies more than Breath of the Wild, then did they really do a bad job, right? So the jury's still out on it. But when we go back to when Breath of the Wild came out, you know, that was, or before it, leading up to its release, we didn't have a lot to be excited about. The Wii U was not doing so well. There weren't a lot of games to be excited about beyond Breath of the Wild. So it was a huge thing to sort of wonder about and get excited on. And when they did show it off, it was a huge step up over anything else Nintendo had been doing at the time. So it was just incredible. And it still is arguably Nintendo's most advanced game they've released, even though when you go back and play it now, it may show some signs of age, at least from a visual perspective. Anyways, point is, yeah, there are things that I don't think Nintendo's perfect with, but for the most part, I'm like, they do pretty good. Like, you take a look at the Mario movie. I'm honestly not surprised of the quality. Like, I think the quality is just superb. And why do I think it's superb? Because this is what Nintendo does. When it comes to... Okay, there are exceptions, right? There are exceptions, but... I realized I was off camera. Anyways, there are exceptions to how much quality Nintendo may put into things. Like there is variety or variance to that. They're not always 100% all in. It does depend, like with every major publisher. But when they do things like this is Nintendo quality stuff. Like when we take a look at the Mario poster, take a look at the trailer, they've been spending years making sure they get this right. They have a team working closely with Illumination. They have Shigeru Miyamoto working closely with Illumination because they want this to feel like a proper Nintendo product that represents the Mario brand, and it's oozing detail and consideration and quality. And this is what Nintendo's biggest products do. Super Mario Odyssey, an incredibly polished product. Breath of the Wild, an incredibly polished product. Animal Crossing, New Horizons, it's super polished. Like Super Smash Bros. Ultimate. Like there are some of their biggest, best games. They take the time with them, and there's just a certain level of polish they tend to have. There are exceptions. I'm having a hard time thinking of them right now, but they do exist. I don't know. I'm trying to think of one. Let's see. If we go Star Fox Zero, there's one. Yeah, Star Fox Zero is kind of a little bit of a blemish. Anyways, to going back to the whole point, though, you know, I think there are fans that are very critical, and I think there are fans that aren't that critical, and I think there's all kinds of people with different opinions. And I think when it comes to the voice of Mario, ultimately, I put out a video. I think some of you guys have seen it already. I'm fine with his voice. I think it's okay. You know, I understand a lot of people were sort of expecting something more similar to what we saw from Charles Martinet. But you gotta consider what the direction is they have for Mario in this movie. Maybe they don't want Mario to sound like a cartoony Italian. Maybe they want Mario to sound more like an American from New York. And if that's the case, you know, then the voice for Mario is all of a sudden not really that bad of a voice. It kind of depends on what you want from it. And I think because we've had for so many years have heard this voice of Mario in the games, it's a very cartoony Italian, it works. But on the flip side though, his voice is very limited. We only see the occasional phrase or word here and there. It's not like we see like long pieces of dialogue in the games. Like Mario's an almost mute character. He's not too far from Link. He has a few sentences here and there, but it's super few and far between. It's not the kind of voice that you use for an actual story to be told in a movie. So they have to do something different. And I think the main reason why there's criticism is just because, well, there's a couple reasons. I think one, a lot of people don't like Chris Pratt. There's that. But I think another element here is just that it's not what people were expecting. It's different from what they've come to know. But the thing is, what we knew, what we've understood as Mario's voice, isn't what will work for a movie. It just won't. So they went a different direction. And I think it's fine. And Charles Martinet is still going to have some sort of presence in this movie. We don't understand to what extent. I'm imagining some sort of cameo. We'll see. Maybe Charles Martinet will also voice Mario for certain parts. I don't know. But he's getting his, he's getting celebrated here. It's not like he's being disrespected. I don't think so. So I think it's all about just picking the right role for what their plan is for Mario, which we don't know yet entirely. We've only seen just a teaser of this movie. We still know so little about it. But let me come back to the chat here. Jay, I'd like to know the sky's limit. This game is going hard on the open air genre they initially pinned Breath of the Wild to be. Right? That is interesting to ask about the sky's limit. Like, I'm going back to my wallpaper. I'm going back to my wallpaper all day. It's just like right there, readily accessible. I don't have to pull up any other media. But like, you take a look at this. There's there's so much layers of elevation. And we go back, like, there's islands down here. There's islands down here, here, and here. Like, there's levels to these sky islands, and that doesn't count any of the open massive world below, which I'm sure there's gonna be tons of changes for as well. So how high do we go? It's a fantastic question. Like, what's the limit here? Is it just gonna be more sky, or can we get so high where we start to see the atmosphere change, and maybe oxygen is very hard, it's hard to breathe, or it gets colder? And I actually really like that thinking. Like, I'm coming back to my face cam now, like thinking about it more as we kind of continue down this sort of road. In Breath of the Wild, there are weather conditions, there are climate conditions, there are different parts of the map that, depending on your elevation, get colder or hotter. And there's wind, and there's lightning, and there's rain, and there's snow, sandstorms. So taking all that into consideration, what they have with Breath of the Wild, I don't think they're going to do away with the weather system or the climate system. They're probably going to expand on it. So we're already high up in the sky. If you were to when you play Breath of the Wild, when you're at the top, the upper limits of the sky, it's really cold. So in Tears of the Kingdom, we're at a whole other level of elevation, right? So is it just going to be even colder? Or I think there's obviously going to have to be some sort of adaptation or change here to where that's not really an issue. But will it become an issue if we continue to go even higher, right? And that's another consideration here. It may be the case that this is treated like its own independent sort of realm, but we see that they are interconnected. But if we think of this as sort of like an expansion upon the idea we saw in Skyward Sword, how Skyloft is like its own realm, is like a cloud barrier, and how in Tears of the Kingdom that invisible cloud barrier has been broken down so they can go up and down between the surface and these sky islands. But if that's the case, then we could treat this section of the world, this upper part of the world, as having its own sort of climate or ecosystem. So maybe it's the case that things get really cold, like right where the clouds are, but when you break through the clouds, that changes. Or they just sort of like retcon the whole temperature that is at that point in the sky. We'll see how things pan out there. But the main point I want to get at here is that they are going to have to rethink how they handle the climate at this elevation and what happens when you go higher. And how, to your point, how high can we go? Will this get to a point where we kind of see space? And that gets interesting because they were playing around with the concept of aliens in Breath of the Wild. They had a literal like UFO like saucer shooting lasers at Link in some of their early prototype footage. So could they go to that level? If you take a look at the Sheikah, they're very reminiscent of the concept of ancient aliens. They seem to have like a very ancient sort of power. They have, like, if you look at some of their structures, it seems like you're looking at constellations. There's definitely some sort of symbolism there. It's similar to depictions of ancient aliens or even Mayans and things of that nature. So it makes you wonder, could that somehow tie into a whole other level of Hyrule where maybe we see some interaction with a greater, higher form that comes from space, but it's aliens, but done in a way that makes sense within this fantasy world for Hyrule. Like, there's that possibility. They could go to that level, pun intended. I don't know. It's an exciting idea. I'm not saying there has to be like aliens per se, but if we can get so high into the sky that we start to see the atmosphere change and it feels like we're at the limits of where like an organism could be before like falling out of the gravitational pull of Earth, that'll be really cool. Now I realize at this point I'm probably going beyond the scope of what Tears of the Kingdom will be, but hypothetically speaking, what if you could get so high up that the effects of gravity are different? I'm not saying to the point where you're gone, but what, I don't know. I don't even know how that works. I don't understand the physics of that. But anyways, the point is that, yeah, there's some potential there to really play around with how high you can go and what happens when you are that high. There's a lot of cool ideas that they could sort of throw in there. Link's going to space. There you go. It's happening. I'm just kidding. I doubt it. Give me a second. I think my cat wants to come inside. One moment. False alarm. She gave up. So she went elsewhere. Alrighty. So moving on here with the chat. Let's see. Harley Sonder. I imagine it would be hard to make an anime where the protagonist doesn't talk, but I haven't watched way too many animes, so correct me if I'm wrong. I can't think of any. There are some where they're quiet, where they don't talk in moments, but it's not the norm. I'm trying to think of one where the main character is kind of quiet. Evangelion? Yeah, because I forget the name of the main character, but I think he's just dealing with so much trauma that he has a lot of bouts where he doesn't talk, but he still talks. There are moments where he explodes and he has monologues or tirades or he screams. Like, he does talk, but there are also moments where he's very quiet. So I don't know. I can't think of a character that doesn't talk at all, like a mute as a main character in an anime. Typically, especially if we're thinking about like shonen animes, the main character is a very loud and talkative. So yeah, I don't know. No, yeah, you need your character to talk. You just do. Like, if you don't have your main character talk and you're making a very weird niche artistic style movie, and I'm not saying those movies can't be good, but they aren't going to appeal to a large audience, and it's not the kind of movie Nintendo's going to make. If they want to appeal to a large audience, they want to make a lot of money, so they're not going to make a weird silent movie that's 2.5 hours long. We're not gonna do that. That's just not gonna happen. AB James, I'm definitely seeing Avatar: The Way of the Water in the theater, and I haven't gone to a theater in years, but I also will likely see the Mario movie in the theaters next year as well. I think I may give that movie a try. I did enjoy the initial Avatar, so, you know, I might. I understand it's going to be more of like a visual masterpiece or showcase, so, you know, that's probably why I'm going to see it in theaters. Ronnie Fazio. An F-Zero by Studio Trigger would be insane and over the top. Who is Studio Trigger? I'm gonna Google that really quick. Studio Trigger. What do they do? Productions. Kill la Kill. Okay. Darling in the Franxx. Okay. Little Witch Academia. All right. Okay. That would be different. That's not what I would have expected for F-Zero. But they are pretty good at making some pretty fluid animation and some cool fighting. Like, sure. Like, I don't think it's. I think it's within the realm of possibility. Yeah. I'm down. When you mentioned the studio, I was like, oh, what if, like, no, this would be, it would be stupid. But what if, like, they hired, like, a studio that was behind, like, Fast and Furious or Need for Speed or something? A.B. James, Anya Taylor-Joy will likely nail the voice of Peach in the Mario movie. That seems like good casting. She could also probably play Zelda. Yeah, I think there's a lot of characters that could probably pull that off. You know, I did see someone suggest maybe Emma Watson play as Princess Zelda. I'm okay with that. Honestly, there's tons of actresses that can do that. It's not. I think Zelda and Princess Peach aren't. I don't want to say they're easy jobs, but they sort of fit an archetype that we've seen throughout. Basically, royal princess. We've seen that done so many times. Now, Zelda might have a little bit more variety there, depending on which version of Zelda we take a look at. But, you know, there's tons of roles there that could be done. Tons of actors that could fit that role. I mean, so, you know, that's fine. I do really want to hear her voice, Anya Taylor-Joy of Peach, though. Like, I'm a big fan of her. I loved her in Queen's Gambit. I also liked her in The Northman as well. So, you know, I would love to see how she handles Peach. Like, I'm looking forward to that. But I have a decent idea of how it's gonna sound. It's not an alien concept, you know, royal princess. Like, we've seen that before. Moving on here. Alrighty, let's see. D.E. Fox, I think Orlando Bloom would be an amazing Link. He's already killed it with Legolas. Okay, that's interesting. Now I think my cat wants to come inside. This is your chance. Come on. Alright, let's go. Come on. Here we go. I've stopped talking multiple times, so you're gonna have to come on camera now. That's the deal. Yeah. There, you get to see her. Alright, you're good. Continue exploring. You're free. Anyways. Let's see. Ronnie Fazio, as an Italian myself, I need Mario to eat pasta in the movie. That would be fun. I'm down. Like, at some point, we're gonna have to see where Mario and Luigi come from, right? So, all right. Sorry, they're like There's another cat. It's my brother's cat, and they're like pulling at a string. Or rather, cable. An important cable. So, yeah. Alright, moving on with here the chat. I'm just looking through. Oh, Javier Vasquez. Studio Trigger made the recent Cyberpunk Edge Runners anime. You know, I've seen that, or I've seen advertisements for it. I haven't watched it yet. I'm looking forward to giving that a try, though. Yeah. Oh, Zachzilla. What is your opinion on Jack Black's Bowser? Okay. Let's get into my opinion of Jack Black's Bowser. It's great. I think it's great. I think he's gonna do an amazing job. I think he's a perfect casting. And there you go. No, I have more to say than that. So, at first, when he said open the gates in the trailer, I was like, okay, I'm feeling it. Like, I thought that was very strong and powerful. But when the Penguin King asks Bowser to yield, and then we see the expression on Bowser's face, it's very, like, very Joker-like. You know, like the face really stretches and moves around. And it almost, you know, it kind of feels like Jack Black being a clown. And we see those facial expressions, and we see how he talks, which is a different tone than how he was when he said open the gates. It was a different tone there. I'm not saying that it can't be a part of the same character. It is, and it fits, but it definitely shows range of this personality, right? Like, from on one side, he's very strong, commanding, demanding, right, as the Koopa King. But on the other, there's like this very antagonistic, comedic, very cynical, kind of like a very Joker-like is kind of like the thought that comes to mind to me. Or, you know, very like a villain with a sense of humor. It maybe is a better way of putting it. And I like that there's that range there. But I will say that when I saw those expressions and he said no, that he does not yield, that didn't immediately fit as well for me in terms of my expectation of Bowser. But this kind of goes back to what I was saying earlier about how people have these expectations for Mario, and they're not being met because, well, they're not using a cartoony Italian. You're using a random American's voice, and it's different for a lot of people's expectations. My expectations of Bowser, as he's been conveyed and portrayed over the years, is a very strong, powerful character. And that moment where he said he denies to yielding, not saying it's not strong and powerful, but that's not the focus. It was a little bit of a mismatch for my initial expectations there. So there was a bit of that immersion. There's a little bit of a lack of that in that moment. But when I say that, I don't say that to mean that Jack Black is doing a bad job or that Bowser was presented poorly. No. I'm simply saying that because this is a video game adaptation and we never had like clear, straight up, like actual significant dialogue for these characters before, beyond, you know, a couple phrases here and there, it's strange, it's new. But as we get more trailers, as we have more time to see what they've shown us, and we finally get the movie, I do feel like it's going to ultimately fit pretty well. I'm going to be pretty comfortable with it. So, basically what I'm saying is that, yeah, Jack Black, his role with Bowser, I honestly think that there's still some getting used to be had. Yeah, I do. Even though I recognize that the world, 99% of humanity, thinks Jack Black did an amazing job. And I agree. I just think that no matter how good of a job it is, there's a need for us to sort of acclimate to what these characters are going to be like, because it's not what we're used to. Now, for people who don't follow Mario or Nintendo as much as I do, they may see this movie and they're like, oh, okay, cool. Like, they won't they won't look at it to the same degree as I. Like, they won't be as analytical of it. They're not as, I guess, they're not as acquainted to Mario and other Nintendo characters as much as I am, or a lot of you guys in the chat, because we're I guess we could say we're hardcore gamers, right? We're hardcore Nintendo fans. We play a lot of Mario and other things like that. So we already have a very well established concept of what Mario and Bowser should sound like in our heads, versus the more casual fan. Yeah, they may have seen or played a Mario game here or there. It's not as established, so for them it'd be a lot easier to see Jack Black's performance of Bowser or Chris Pratt's performance of Mario and be like, oh, okay, whatever. Like, they may not think twice on it, right? So that's something else to consider here. This movie is gonna be mainstream. It's gonna be a big deal. It's gonna hit a large audience, and for a lot of people, there isn't gonna be like a learning curve or a getting used to curve. But for hardcore fans, I think there's gonna be, because we already had that an expectation in mind. But anyways, point is, I think Jack Black is doing great. I think for the ideas that were trying to be conveyed, he showed incredible range, and I love that. Even the one thing that, you know, if I'm gonna give a legitimate criticism, the part where he's getting the Power Star, that also had a different vibe to it. And I think I've heard the idea thrown around that this is apparently maybe at the end of a musical, which, okay, there's going to be songs in this movie. Okay, that may be cool, may not be, I don't know. I'll have to see how that all comes together. I think I may need more context there. That part was a little funky to me, but it was also very, very much cartoony. Like, when Bowser's first showing off, it's very like serious, epic. And even when he says no to yielding, it's still serious, but with, like, you know, that really sort of like dark comedic vibe behind it. But then when he's getting the Power Star, it's very like kid show villain, don't take it seriously at all. Like, there's definitely a spectrum there, and it might be a little bit mismatched. Like, there's a possibility there. Ultimately, I just think I need to see more context before I ultimately judge on it. But for what they are, I think it was fine. Like, I think I have no criticism of Jack Black itself. Like, it's, if anything, if Bowser comes off as bad, my opinion would probably be, this is just me, you know, predicting what could happen, and I think it's going to be fine. So I'm not even predicting this. I'm just saying, if the movie were to be bad, it wouldn't come down to the voice acting. It would come more down to the direction and the choices, and the actors may do the best they can under the circumstances they're put in. And that's just that simple. Like, you know, right now I'm saying that how Bowser sounded at the end when he got the Power Star sounded a little kiddish to me, which may not necessarily be wrong, but in contrast to what we just saw Bowser in the first part of the trailer, it was a little off-putting. So when I see the full context, it may be fine, but if the direction of the movie doesn't give it good context, then it may be bad. Hopefully, I've expressed my point here. There's actually something else I want to touch on really quick. I find this is, I guess what's interesting is talking more about a movie as opposed to a video game. There are concepts and ideas that I don't normally touch on the channel, because I'm talking more about video games as opposed to movies. But I'll say that I find that when people think an actor is bad, it's not actually because the actor is bad. It's because that actor is put under poor conditions. I think the issues come more down to the direction, and more down to direction and just setting and all of that. Because, you know, you may be told to play a certain thing in a certain way, and there's only so much you can do with that. You gotta listen to your boss, right? So, and if they're telling you to do something that's stupid, and they're being put in a stupid scene, well, guess what? No matter how good you may kill it, it may still be stupid in a stupid scene. And there you go. So, you know, we'll see. I have a super chat here from Taker610. Thank you very much, Taker. Taker says, best animated villain was Jeremy Irons as Scar. You know, maybe. I think Scar is pretty good. I love, Lion King's one of my favorite animated movies. So, you know, I'm having a hard time disagreeing with that. Does How to Train Your Dragon even have a villain? No, How to Train Your Dragon is like my favorite, like, sort of CGI animated movie. Yeah, but that doesn't have a villain. Not like a main antagonist. I can't think of one. Yeah, Scar. I might agree with you on that. I'm trying to think of like something better than Scar. I'm having trouble coming up with one. I'm sure there's other good ones out there, but yeah, Scar is definitely one of the better ones. The bigger reality: this movie is gonna sell like crazy. It's gonna be ridiculous. Nintendo's going to make so much money from this movie. You know, the point I made earlier about how this is gonna be just the beginning. Oh yeah. Yeah, this is going to be a huge money maker, and I would be shocked Nintendo doesn't do this again. They're going to hit it out of the park. They absolutely will. Like, this movie doesn't have to be the best movie ever made. It just has to be okay. Even if it's only as good as a Sonic movie, that'll probably still be fine. But considering how well Mario sells, even if it's only as good as the Sonic movie, it's probably going to do really well. And I'm going to tell you straight up, I think the Mario movie is probably going to be considered a better movie. Why? Well, one thing is Sonic movie's live action with a little bit of CGI because, you know, Sonic characters. And I haven't seen the movies, okay, so I'm not trying to judge them harshly. I've seen reviews of them and I've seen trailers and stuff. From what I've heard and seen, I think they're solid movies. But the Mario movie, and they may even review similarly, but what I mean is the Mario movie is going to be more of a spectacle. Like, you look at what they did in that trailer, it's impressive what we're seeing visually of this movie. Like, it's going to be one of those things where people are like, oh, whoa, this is like one of the better looking fantasy movies we've ever seen. And that's a selling point right there. It's not just the fact that it's a Mario movie, it's one of the better looking, it might be the best looking, most impressive visual experience we've ever gotten from Illumination ever. And that's going to be a huge selling point too. So yeah, I think it's going to be a big deal. The Zesty card. Do you think it's a sure thing the Mario movie makes 1 billion minimum? I don't know. And the reason I say I don't know is mainly because I talk about games. I don't talk about movies usually. So I don't pay attention to movie sales really. And yeah, so I don't really know what would be considered incredible. I mean, I could look up stuff. What are you up to? All right. I don't know. Yeah, I wish I could tell you. I don't know. I'll tell you this though. I think it's going to sell better than Detective Pikachu. Yeah. And I thought Detective Pikachu was pretty impressive. I think it's going to do better than Detective Pikachu. I think it's do better than the Sonic movies. It's going to be... Alright, I'll say this. I don't know what the numbers are, but I think it will be, by a significant margin, the best-selling video adaptation movie ever. Probably not really a stretch given what Nintendo's doing with this movie and that it's Mario. But yeah, that's my estimation. And actually, you know, I do think that's interesting that you bring that up, Taker. Taker said $1 billion is harder to do now than it was 3 years ago. And that's alluding to how ever since COVID-19, the pandemic, and how that's all kind of changed everything. People don't go to theaters as much anymore. I love going to theaters. I don't go that often because there's rarely a movie that I'm like, oh man, I gotta go see it in the theater. But occasionally there's like, oh yeah, I'm gonna go see it in the theater. Like, I saw the recent Batman movie. I saw that in the theater. It was solid. I also saw Dragon Ball Superhero. That was pretty good too. And I'm gonna see this Mario movie, and maybe I'll watch Avatar. But you know, like, I still love going to the theater because it's an experience. I enjoy seeing that. Now on the flip side, there are a lot of things that can annoy me. When I saw The Northman in theaters as well. That was fun. I was actually in Colombia when I did that. I went with my cousins, and that was really cool. The theater there was like better than most theaters I see here, which was interesting. But anyway, my issue with going to theaters though is that I love how it can be presented, but let's say the people there aren't doing their job and the theater's dirty, or or something happens with the film. Sometimes that happens. Like they might start it a little bit late. There might be audio off. It might skip. I've seen it happen a couple of times, and I hate that. And then the biggest issue is just other people. If other people are going to clap or cheer or make noise or cry or use cell phones, like, it ruins my experience of the movie. Now, don't get me wrong. When I'm in the theater and I'll go with people, like, I want to have like a little bit of chatter, but I don't scream, right? I try to keep it like down. But there are people who can sometimes ruin the experience a little bit, or something as simple as, depending on like how the seats may be arranged, someone can get up and they will block part of the screen. Hate that. So, there are some things about theaters I don't like, but being able to see a big screen with the really powerful audio and, kind of going out, like the whole experience of going out and getting snacks and stuff, like that's all like a fun little experience. So I do enjoy that. I don't want that to go away. But anyways, for the Mario movie, they're only putting it in theaters. They're not releasing it digitally same day. I'm sure it'll come out digitally eventually, but it's not going to be a same day thing where you can choose. And I appreciate that. I want to see this in theaters because there's an experience there that I think will be pretty epic. So I'm looking forward to that. Ronnie Fazio, Robert Pattinson did a great job as Batman. I thought it was solid. Yeah, it's not better than the Dark Knight trilogy with Christopher Nolan, but still solid. Yeah. No, not Christian Bale. I don't know why I say Christopher Nolan. Christian Bale. It's the Chris part. Yeah, Christian Bale movies. Anyway. I got another super chat here from Paint Fat Purple. Thank you very much for the super chat. Super appreciated. Let's see here. Popcorn. Yeah, popcorn. I would love to get some popcorn with my movies. I do enjoy some popcorn, absolutely. Inferno 95. Most of the dialogue from Mario games are old reused dialogue from older Mario games. Charles' lack of voicing Mario could be why Nintendo didn't use him for the movie. Oh yeah, like they're reusing older stuff. Like it's not. Yeah, like he doesn't do a lot of voice work for Mario. It's not like he does a lot of dialogue. Yeah, and it could be as simple as that. Now, I don't know what happened behind the scenes. They even bothered to have a conversation with him about what they could do, because he's done other roles before where there's more talking. But they're going in a particular direction. I'm not going to really question that. I don't know what happened behind the scenes, so But looking through the chat here, let's see, how long have we been going on for? Not long, but I also said I wouldn't do much longer. So I'm going to go on for about another 10-ish minutes. So any more questions you guys want me to address, I'll try and address them relatively quick. Let's see here. The Zesty card. The last movie you saw was the Demon Slayer movie. I really enjoyed that movie. I did not see it in theaters, though. No. Andrew Quimby, do you think Tears of the Kingdom will make more than the first Breath of the Wild? That's a tough question, and that's one where I feel slightly more equipped in answering because I pay attention to video game sales more. I don't know. It's tough because Breath of the Wild launched with the Switch and it's been selling for so long. Tears of the Kingdom is coming out near the end of the Switch's life cycle. Like, how long will games continue to sell well on Switch? But then on the flip side, like, could Tears of the Kingdom also be used to launch with new hardware at the same time? And it's a cross-release. If it's a cross-release, it could sell really well on both systems. So, it has that potential there. And that could bolster sales. And then you take a look at certain games that perform well. I mean, honestly, a really good comparison is probably Splatoon 3. if Splatoon 3 is pacing to outsell Splatoon 2, then maybe Tears of the Kingdom could also pace to outsell Breath of the Wild. But something else to consider here is that just because Splatoon 3, and I haven't checked the numbers recently, but I think I heard it was doing incredibly well. Even if Splatoon 3 is pacing to outsell Splatoon 2, keep in mind more people have a Switch now. So there's two different angles to look at this. From one angle, you say, oh, because more people have a Switch now, there's more people more likely to buy Splatoon 3 now that it's a more relevant product. Yes, but on the flip side, because more people have a Switch now, more of the people that would have bought Splatoon 2 earlier are already buying Splatoon 3. So it has a higher pace, but it also may come to a screeching halt sooner, because the people that were going to buy Splatoon 3 are already there, as opposed to Splatoon 2 that came out back in 2017. A lot of those people didn't have a Switch yet. So faster paced sales may be misleading, and that may also apply for Tears of the Kingdom. So that's a tough call. And I think it's one of those things where we're going to have to wait and see how Splatoon 3 sells before we can predict how Tears of the Kingdom will sell. I guess another comparison would be Xenoblade Chronicles 3, which I don't know how much that has sold either. Like, all these games that come out recently. These are like major sequels to games that we had early on Switch. I mean, can we think of a game where we got a direct sequel to both that came, where the initial one came out on Switch and the next one came out on Switch, and it performed better, like it sold better? There's a Pokemon games, and I mean that's it. The Pokemon Legends Arceus is crazy. It's tough. I think odds are Tears of the Kingdom will not outsell Breath of the Wild. I would like to be wrong on that. But I do not think it will outsell Breath of the Wild. I think it being a direct sequel, and just thinking about how much they've shown off of the game so far, I think there's a bit of a dialogue or a narrative that Tears of the Kingdom is basically just kind of like an enhanced or expanded upon Breath of the Wild. And as a result, it's not going to seem as a bold, fresh, new take on the Zelda series. And a lot of people who got Breath of the Wild may feel like, oh, we've seen this before, we don't need it again. And I think that's going to impact the sales a little bit. I think it's still going to sell incredibly well. I think it's still going to probably be the second best-selling Zelda game of all time, because Breath of the Wild is the first one. But I don't think it's likely Tears of the Kingdom outsells Breath of the Wild unless they turn things around. You know, that we haven't seen that much of Tears of the Kingdom yet. There may be things done that change my mind on it, change the mind on it for a lot of people. But it also comes down to another issue here. And that issue is how Nintendo has been presenting Tears of the Kingdom. They've barely marketed this game. As I said earlier in this show, the excitement I had for Breath of the Wild was far greater going into its release than the excitement I have now for Tears of the Kingdom. And as I said earlier, part of that has to do with the fact that back then we didn't have a lot of things to excite about because we just had nothing. Switch has a whole bunch of things beyond Tears of the Kingdom. But the other main reason is just because Nintendo hasn't really done much to get us excited about. They've shown us a few trailers, but that's it. And these trailers, while cool, I don't think it's as mind-blowingly new and exciting as the trailers we had for Breath of the Wild, because, well, Breath of the Wild was the first true open-air Zelda game. Tears of the Kingdom is a follow-up to that, and they haven't shown that much that really, makes it feel as groundbreaking. But we haven't seen everything yet. There could be a lot more here, so we'll see. Javier Vasquez, should the story be really good, it might sell more copies of Breath of the Wild. And that is something that could go in his favor. We talked about how what would it, if we talk about what would it take to get Tears of the Kingdom to outsell Breath of the Wild. A good story, a better told story than Breath of the Wild, I think will go a long ways. That alone won't make that much of a difference, but it will help. But what ultimately could definitely like help it, this alone isn't gonna do it. It may not even be possible. I mean, it's probably possible, but it's like really unlikely. But one thing that can make it slightly more feasible is if they have a big moment. And they probably need a few big moments actually, but one big moment they could do is have that moment where Link talks. If Link starts talking, like actually has dialogue in Tears of the Kingdom, that will be a big moment. And that will help Tears of the Kingdom to stand out a little bit, and a strong story could help to complement that. So that's definitely something that could help out. And I think the other thing for Tears of the Kingdom, and simply based off what we know so far of it, I think the idea behind it is truly expanding upon the concept of open air, right? And with that in mind, like, they could take it to a whole other level. If they really sell us on this idea of this world that's more open than any other game ever, and they show off a whole bunch of cool new things, taking advantages of this concept and engine that accomplishes that, then that could be incredible. Like, imagine if they show a sky battle with a dragon. I've talked about this before. And we've seen how they're planning different like attack patterns and animations for Link in the sky. Imagine, it doesn't have to be a dragon per se, but that's just something that comes to mind. Like, there's some sort of sky battle with a huge beast in the sky, and there's movement here, and it's flying through the sky, and you think Link interacting with all these things, and then it goes down to the ground and above, and they make it seem like this huge dynamic fight that happens within this open world, like it's not like its own separate thing. That could really hype people. Like, what they gotta do is they gotta show off Tears of the Kingdom in the way where it becomes clear that this game is taking open world exploration and adventuring to a whole other level. We haven't really seen enough of that yet, and it may not even accomplish that. So it's gonna be really hard. Even if they do show off gameplay that makes that clear, even if there is like a big sort of moment or two of Link talking, even if they like completely hit it out of the park of marking this game from now leading up to release, even if they have all these things going for it, and Tears of the Kingdom even reviews better than Breath of the Wild, it still probably won't outsell Breath of the Wild. But the reason why I even entertain the idea is because I just have that much faith that Nintendo will do their absolute best to make this game as great as it can be. And I do think that they will market it well enough. But the other element that is in its favor, though, is it does seem like games sell really well on Switch and have only gone better and better because of how many people who own it. But the question comes down to, are more people going to buy the next Zelda game because more people own it now, or some people are simply going to buy it quicker because more of the people who would buy it are buying it now? And I don't know the answer to that question. But I think most likely Tears of the Kingdom won't outsell Breath of the Wild. Even though I really want it to, and I think it has a chance, it's a slim one. Taker610. I feel like Prime 4 has to come out next holiday. It will be almost 5 years since development was restarted at that point. I would have agreed with you if Metroid Prime Remake was coming out this year, but it's not, and I do believe that's real. So either A, Metroid Prime Remake is not happening anytime soon and Prime 4 is coming out next holiday, or Metroid Prime 4 is coming out the year after. That's my take on it. I know some people might suggest, well, what if Prime Remake and Prime 4 come out in the same year? Maybe Prime Remake comes out early next year, and then Prime 4 comes out at the holiday. Well, we don't know about a March release yet. They could announce that. Maybe they announce it, Metroid Prime Remake, for the anniversary this November, and it's coming out in March. Maybe. And Prime 4 comes out the holiday. I think that's unlikely, but, you know, maybe. I think we'll definitely at least see footage for Prime 4 by next year. By E3 next year, we will see footage. Like, that I believe. Wholeheartedly. So, hopefully I'm not wrong. you know. And going back to the Tears of the Kingdom thing, I mentioned this earlier, but I just want to clarify my point a little bit more. Everything I said about Tears of the Kingdom now selling Breath of the Wild, that's all contingent upon there not being new hardware. I mentioned there being new hardware. If, let's say, Nintendo announces their next generation and it launches alongside Tears of the Kingdom this May, that may change things a little bit. It might not change things. I still think it probably won't change things enough, but I think it will be a lot closer if they do that. So we'll see. Again, I would love to be wrong. I want Breath of the Wild 2 or Tears of the Kingdom to, you know, because every time there's a new Zelda, I want to one up the previous one, not just in terms of quality, but also sales as well. Why do I care? Well, you might ask. Well, it's not just because I'm a Nintendo fanboy and Nintendo wants to do really well. It's because if the games do well, they make more money. You know what they use that money for? They put it back into the company so they can make bigger and better games, so they can do more research and development, so they can maybe put more money into other things like movies. If the Zelda brand grows even more, they're more likely to have more faith, to have enough faith in Zelda to make a movie on it. So yes, I want the next game to sell as well as possible. If it outsells Breath of the Wild, that would be incredible, and it makes everything we talked about even more likely. Yeah. Yeah, D. Fox says, if Prime Remake doesn't come out this year, then Jeff Grubb is going to be shaving his head. That was the bet. At this point, it's October. The game has not been announced. I really, really doubt the game is coming out this year. I really doubt it. I really do. So, you know, I want it to come out this year, but it's too late. It's just too late. It's not happening. Yeah, I don't even want to entertain the idea anymore because it's just not likely. Maybe next year, but definitely not this year. But yeah, I think you've kind of reached the end for tonight's little Q&A discussion thing. But yeah, guys, thanks for coming by. Thanks for liking the stream. If you haven't, maybe like the stream, subscribe if you haven't done so already. It'd be super appreciated. But I'll see you guys all really soon. Take care. Bye.